Hi everyone, I hope you're doing well today. This will be a bit of a different video. I will be comparing two musicals which I watched this weekend. The first one being Beauty and the Beast, the 2017 Disney film starring Emma Watson and Dan Stevens. And the other musical was the 25th anniversary production of The Phantom of the Opera, which was produced in 2011 and stars Sierra Boggess and Ramin Karimloo. I was surprised that there weren't any comparison videos of these two stories on YouTube, at least none that I could find, and so I thought it would be fun to go over both the music and the stories, because I think there's a lot of things in common between them, and also some very big differences. So just to start out with, The Phantom of the Opera is a late Victorian novel written by Gaston Leroux, a French author, and it takes place in Paris. And Beauty and the Beast is also a French fairy tale, and I believe it was written in the late 1700s, and it also takes place in France. There were two authors of this fairy tale. The one with which we're most familiar was written by Jean-Marie de Beaumont. I have read The Phantom of the Opera years and years ago. I don't believe I've ever read this Beauty and the Beast original. And I will say that both of the musicals are quite a bit different than the original source material. So I'm going to be focusing again on the musicals and just analyzing them as stories outside of the books for a change. So I'm assuming most people know both of these stories. I will be going over the plots and spoilers, so just a heads up in case you don't want to know how these stories go. So Beauty and the Beast takes place in 18th century France, and it's about this very rich and handsome prince who lives in a castle, and he is so arrogant that he only associates with beautiful people and beautiful things. So one day a beggar woman shows up at his doorstep and asks for help, and he refuses to help her. And it turns out that she's really a sorceress in disguise, and she casts a spell on the prince and his castle and all the people living in the castle, which will not be broken unless he can find somebody to love him in his new form, which is the form of a beast. And that's where this rose comes into play. Every so often a petal will fall from the rose. If all the petals have fallen and the beast has not found someone who loves him, then he will stay a beast forever, and his castle will remain enchanted forever as well. So that's the premise of Beauty and the Beast. I should add that Belle is the beauty, so she's a small town girl who is dreaming of adventure and being pursued by a very unpleasant guy named Gaston, who is a soldier and who just thinks the world of himself and will not take no for an answer. So Belle, of course, is a lot smarter than to fall for that kind of guy, and so she really is in an adventurous frame of mind when her father disappears, and she sets off to find him only to discover he's been imprisoned at the Beast's castle. And so Belle, basically she tricks her father into switching places with her. Her father goes home and Belle is now prisoner in the castle, where the Beast is hoping she will fall in love with him and break the spell. So, the Phantom of the Opera is a little bit different. It takes place at an opera house. I'm not exactly sure what an opera house looks like, so we're just going to draw something that looks fancy. And also like a bank. So yeah, the opera house is where this ghost, this phantom lives, and no one's ever really seen him. He haunts the opera house and makes demands of the managers who are just trying to make an honest living, producing operas and getting people to attend. As the story starts out, the current manager has just left, and 2 new managers have showed up on the scene, Messieurs Andre and Firmin. And they've got quite a dilemma on their hands because they have the diva, Carlotta, who wants to sing all the main roles. This will be Carlotta. And they also have young Christine Daae, who is just a little chorus girl, who the Phantom of the Opera, this ghost, has been training to be a singer. And so the managers of the opera want to appease Carlotta and allow her to have all the roles, whereas this Phantom of the Opera, who is becoming more and more enamored of his student, who doesn't really know him, she's just heard his voice, he wants her to sing the lead roles, which is causing a huge conflict at the opera house, as you can imagine. And I should add that one of the big themes of the story here is the angel of music, who is what the ghost calls himself, but Christine, the chorus girl, thinks that the angel of music is this supernatural being that her father had told her about when she was a child, and her father promised he would send her this angel of music to look after her after he died. But unfortunately, the Phantom of the Opera takes advantage of this childhood dream of Christine's and takes the role of the angel of music to basically try to win her over. So let's dig a bit deeper into the comparisons and contrasts between these 2 stories. They're both love triangles. In the Phantom of the Opera, you've got Christine, who's the young, naive girl who sings in the choir, becomes an opera star, and her naivety is taken advantage of by the Phantom, Eric, and he's a very brutal person. He casually commits murder a couple of times in the musical, very obsessed with Christine, and just a very abusive person. Raoul is the Prince Charming figure. He is an old friend of Christine's and tries to protect her from Eric. And there's always differing opinions on the dynamic here, but that's what the characters do, and it's up to you to interpret it as you will. In The Beauty and the Beast, you've got Belle, who's also a young lady, but much smarter and more discerning than Christine. The Beast, who has a physical deformity like Eric, his name is Adam, by the way, he starts out very selfishly, but becomes more and more human throughout the story. Human in the sense that he can empathize with other people, he repents of his selfishness, and just becomes a very nice person. So, big difference there. Gaston, on the other hand, is the soldier that is pursuing Belle throughout this whole thing, and he becomes more repulsive as the story goes on, in spite of his apparent advantages. So, very different dynamics in these love triangles, and the antagonists are also different people. So jumping down here to common themes, a big one is be careful what you wish for. So what really leads Christine to fall for this phantom is, she's been dreaming of this angel of music since childhood, and he shows up in this rather negative form. And then Belle, she dreams of leaving her little town. She also misreads her little town in the sense that she sees it as rather harmless and quaint and silly, but it actually becomes a very antagonistic force at the end of the book when they try to hunt down the beast. And it's kind of an interesting change of events. But she too got quite a bit more adventure than perhaps she bargained for. Of course, I already mentioned the physical deformities. Eric's was from birth, and Adam's was from the spell. One thing I wanted to mention was the father's influence in both of these stories. So, of course, with the Angel of Music fantasy that Christine's father instilled in her, obviously he meant well, but it ended up being kind of a thorn in her side as she grew up and was looking for that figure. Contrast that with Belle's father, who is a tinkerer and an inventor and has taught her how to reason, and also taught her just the basic differences between right and wrong and who you can trust and who you can't. So big difference there, I would say. Mixed influence in the Phantom of the Opera, good influence in the Beauty and the Beast. Some differences I will mention apart from Christine and Belle. The Beast is isolated. He lives in his castle and doesn't really talk to anyone and isn't really seen until Belle shows up. Whereas the Phantom is omniscient in this opera house, and he makes a point of inserting himself into different productions and dictating how the operas will be run. And it's just a very different, a different reaction to how society has treated him. The Phantom has decided that everybody will suffer along with him, and whereas the Beast has pretty much just withdrawn into himself. Another one that kind of stood out to me was the ending, how the crowd was portrayed. So, yes, getting into some spoilers here. So, in The Beauty and the Beast, the whole village turns out and follows Gaston to the castle and try to attack it. So you've got like this mob going on there. And then in The Phantom of the Opera, Raoul and the managers and the police all get together and try to track down the Phantom. So here you've got legitimate authority, and here you've got illegitimate authority, and very different ways of handling the situation. Although very similar in how they pan out. There is certainly an element of frenzy in both of those groups. Let's turn to the music, actually. I really enjoy the music in both of these productions. They both have great character songs, great chorus songs. There's definitely similarities between Masquerade and Be Our Guest in terms of the mood and the optimism there. These are both chorus pieces. The other great chorus pieces are, again, going back to the mob and the police tracking down the Beast and the Phantom. Those two songs are going to track down this murderer and kill the Beast. They're very similar. I can't spell. They're very similar in mood. Both very effective in building tension and drama to see what will happen. There's a lot of similarities in aesthetics between these two stories. Although again, differences in the sense that the Paris Opera House is all-encompassing. It spans, an underground lake and the stage, of course, and an enormous chandelier. There's lots of candles in both of these. A lot of aristocratic vibes, I guess, in both of them. I wanted to just point out, though, that the Phantom of the Opera is very much a ghost horror story. And so in a sense, it's not quite comparable with Beauty and the Beast. It's spooky, it's dark, and it's just gruesome, frankly, in parts. And whereas the Beauty and the Beast, it is not spooky, it's more sad, nostalgic, and the gothic elements are certainly there, but they're more understated. And whereas you've got this edgy, seductive vibe here in the Phantom of the Opera, it's a story of obsession. In the Beauty and the Beast, you've got, again, the nostalgia. It's very magical and whimsical, and it's centered around friendship first. One thing I really appreciate about Beauty and the Beast is that the friendship takes center stage here, and that makes it, I think, truly romantic. Not that you have to have a friendship first, but it puts the gothic elements second, whereas the Phantom of the Opera puts the gothic elements first. So depending on what you like, you may prefer one or the other. I kind of prefer Beauty and the Beast because it's got that whimsy, it's got those friendship feelings, and there's a thread of hope that leads to ultimate redemption. The characters are in their proper places from a traditional story perspective. And, you don't have the abusive male being the main character. It's very compelling. It's very good for girls to watch, I would say, if you're going to be watching princess stories. The Phantom of the Opera, what I do like about that one over Beauty and the Beast is its use of striking imagery. So I haven't mentioned this much, but the aesthetics are very, very strong in the Phantom of the Opera. There's the Phantom's mask, of course. There is a music box that plays a role tying the past to the present. There is a big chandelier that kind of represents order over chaos, and the chandelier breaks at one point, which is, excellent symbolism for what's going on in the story. And while I don't like all of the songs in the Phantom of the Opera, they are absolutely unforgettable, and the dialogue is woven in very cleverly. And the different lines of the different characters in the songs overlay each other at different points, and you've got different melodies going on at the same time. It's very powerful and dramatic, and definitely one of the things I absolutely enjoy about the Phantom of the Opera. The other thing I will say that it has going for it is the entire concept is pretty unique. A lot like Jules Verne's Captain Nemo and the Nautilus submarine. This idea of a guy living under the opera house and pranking people, and really a tragic character as well. To me, it really embodies that period of history, the late Victorian era, and its obsession with order and chaos, past and present technology, and pre-industrialization. All of those things are beautifully summed up in the Phantom of the Opera, and you do feel some empathy for the Phantom in spite of his terrible behavior. For me, though, I would say Beauty and the Beast gets the edge in terms of which one I prefer, because if you take away all of the aesthetics and the music and the mystery in the Phantom of the Opera, it does become a very sordid tale of deception, abduction, attempted forced marriage, all those kinds of things. And, you know, if you take away the magic from Beauty and the Beast, yeah, it gets more mundane, but it's still a story that you can get behind. So, I don't know, that's just my personal opinion. I do prefer the romances that are less edgy. And, yeah, I think these are both fun to watch. I don't know that the Phantom of the Opera will appeal to everyone, because it does get pretty crazy in parts. But I was certainly entertained by both of these musicals, and they are ones I will return to in the future. So that's all I've got for this episode. Let me know your thoughts in the comments if you like either of these musicals, if you have any recommendations and which versions to watch. And please like the video if you enjoyed it, and I'll see you next time.